All right, let's talk about one of the most maddening things in investing. You know what I'm talking about, selling at the absolute bottom right before a huge rally. It feels personal, right? Like someone was waiting for you to tap out. But what if I told you it's all part of a predictable game?
I mean, you know the feeling. You finally throw in the towel, you sell, and the very next day the market just rips higher. It's like it was personally waiting to spite you. It's an uncanny feeling, isn't it?
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. The very second you give up, everything reverses. It feels like some kind of dark magic, or worse, a conspiracy aimed directly at your portfolio. But what if it's not magic, and it's not a conspiracy?
We're going to call this the bottom seller's paradox. Let's actually break down what's happening here piece by piece and figure out the mechanics behind this so-called magic.
Okay, so here is the most important thing to get straight right away. It is not personal. You, specifically, are not being targeted. What you're experiencing is actually a predictable, almost mechanical outcome of a much, much larger game that's being played.
So, if you're not the target, then who is? To really understand this game, you have to know who the key players are. And that means we need to talk about the market whales. A market whale isn't just some rich person. We're talking about an institution, a massive fund, with so much capital that their actions can literally move the market. And here's the key part. They're not hunting for your individual shares. They're hunting for collective panic.
So let's just clear up this common misunderstanding. The myth is that some giant is after your small position. The reality is so much bigger than that. They are targeting the behavior of the entire herd, and they are looking for the exact point when that herd finally breaks.
So what's their strategy? Well, they have a playbook, and we're going to call it the accumulation game. Let's use a hypothetical just to make this really concrete. Imagine some huge institutions know that a new government policy is coming that's going to be fantastic for an asset like Bitcoin. Their number one goal is super simple. Buy as much of it as they possibly can, as cheaply as they can, before that good news gets out. So, how do they do that?
Their weapon of choice is FUD. That stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They need you to be scared, so they'll amplify negative rumors, they'll coordinate with scary headlines. They basically create an atmosphere where holding on feels like the dumbest decision you could possibly make.
And their playbook is super methodical. Step 1, they manufacture that panic. Step 2, they time it with the news cycle. Step 3, they start applying real selling pressure. But the really critical steps are 4 and 5. They test the market to find its breaking point, and then they just quietly buy up everything that the panicked herd is dumping.
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If they push too hard, the whole thing could just collapse. If they don't push hard enough, they can't buy what they need. So how do they find that perfect spot?
They do it by testing. They run what are called stress tests or shakeouts. A piece of bad news hits, they'll apply a little selling pressure, and they just watch. How many people sold? Not enough? Okay. They'll wait for the next opportunity and push again, maybe a little harder this time. It is a calculated process of finding the point of maximum pain.
But look, this pressure campaign can't just go on forever. Even the whales have their own set of constraints. Let's dig into why this game actually has to have an ending.
Just try to wrap your head around the scale of this. A major player might need to put $100 billion to work, and to do that successfully, they need one thing above all else: a ton of sellers providing them with shares to buy.
So they face some real challenges. They need massive liquidity for one. They can't just buy everything at once. That would send the price to the moon and completely wreck their own entry point. They need a long period of downward pressure to buy in slowly. And, super important, if their whole strategy is based on that policy change we talked about, they are on a deadline. The clock is ticking.
And this brings us to the final act, the big reveal. This is where we connect the entire whales game directly back to your personal experience of selling right at the bottom.
So let's ask that core question one last time. Why does it feel like the market was just sitting there, waiting for you, specifically you, to give up before it took off? The answer is actually pretty simple and pretty powerful. The rally started because you weren't alone. Your decision to sell happened at the same time as the decision of the majority of the herd.
And that collective act of surrender, that huge flood of selling from everyone who reached their breaking point at the exact same moment, well, that provided the final piece of the puzzle.
It provided that massive wave of liquidity the whales had been waiting for the whole time. Your shares, combined with everyone else's, were exactly what they needed to finally finish their accumulation. The game was over because they won.
And this really gets to a fundamental truth of the market.
The bottom isn't a price on a chart, it's an event. It is the exact moment of maximum pessimism, when the herd finally gives up and provides the fuel for the next rally to begin.
So let's reframe this whole thing. You didn't just happen to sell at the bottom. You sold at the bottom because the bottom is defined by people like you selling. That moment of mass capitulation, that is the bottom. It's a structural feature of the market, not a personal failure. So the ultimate takeaway here isn't about perfectly timing the market. That's probably impossible. It's about understanding the psychology of the herd and finding a way to separate your own decisions from that big wave of collective emotion. The real question is, now that you see the game for what it is, how will you choose to play it?
Smash like and subscribe.